The changes which are discussed in this section on HY1 are the results of recommendations made by the examinations regulators. Every centre should be aware of the new features, not least because centres have been teaching the new specification since September 2012, and the students will sit the examination in May 2013. Although there are not too many changes to HY1, there are, nonetheless, some 4 significant changes to the number and content of topics in the specification, to the number of questions on the examination paper, to the time allowance for the examination, and also to the mark schemes. The full range of all HY1 mark schemes are available on the Specimen Assessment Materials section of the WJEC website. The first major point is that the specification is changed for all HY1 units. Though in some instances the changes have been minor, in others they are massive. There are changes to the content area of some of the topics. There is some rearrangement of content in other areas, as well as the addition of a new topic area. Centres are advised to revisit the specification and make sure that the new version is being followed. The specification is available online at the WJEC website, that is wjec.co.uk. Also available on the website are the SAMs, the Specimen Assessment Materials, for all the HY1 topics. It is worthwhile to look at these, if only to see the greater variety of stems that may be used in the examination, and gain a feel for the structure of the questions that may be set. The most important change to the HY1 specification is to the content. To try and offer greater and wider coverage of the period study, a 4th topic area has been added to the period studies. This has been done by amending some existing topics, by splitting some existing topics, or simply adding a new area to offer greater variety in the course. For example, introducing a social and economic, a foreign policy, or a gender theme where it is appropriate. In the period study, the history of Wales and England 1880 to 1980, for example, we have added a gender theme on the change in role and status of women 1880 to 1929. As in some of the other period studies, this has been done by amending the content of one or more of the existing topic areas. It does not mean that centres stop teaching about the role of women in those areas, but it does offer an opportunity to focus on a new topic area to centres to meet their interests or to explore a different area of history. It should be noted that the structure and the layout of the specification has not changed. Centres are still required to discuss the origin, the key issues, and the significance of the main changes throughout the stated period. As usual, it should be noted that the key issues identified in the specification are not prescriptive or exclusive, but give a general idea of some of the key issues identified by the principal examiner. The period studies have all had something added or changed, as this summary shows. In the 1485 to 1603 period study, the introduction of a social and economic theme would provide some alternative to the largely political and religious coverage. In the 1603 to 1715 and the 1780 to 1886 studies, the opportunity has been taken to split the large topics into more manageable component parts, while other period studies, see the introduction of new country, new gender or foreign policy issues. Centres need to reflect on how these changes will affect the pathways they select through the specification, and it is hoped that centres will take advantage of the new topics to provide a full, meaningful coverage of the specification at AS. At this stage, it is probably as well to say that the examination regulators have not recommended that WJEC should make any changes to the content of the period study specification for A2. The changes above apply only to the content of the AS period studies. Centres can be reassured that the expectations of what the candidates need to do in the examination are as high as ever and no different from the demands in 2012 or earlier. It should also be noted that the requirement to answer 2 questions in the examination remains. HY1 will still be worth 120 UMS. There will be the same type of questions, even though some of the stems, as shown in the SAMs, may differ. Candidates will still be expected to answer 2 questions from the 4 now provided, though they will have some 10 minutes longer to complete the examination. From May 2013, the HY examination would last for 100 minutes, which gives the candidates an extra 5 minutes per question. We hope that they will use this time to stop and think about the question set and plan an essay to the exact question set. We really do not want them spending the extra 10 minutes unloading their class notes. We want them using the extra time allowed for thinking time to try and improve their responses to the questions they have been set. In and from the May 2000 examination, we will amend the layout of the questions to try and focus the attention of the candidates on the key words in the question. As the specimen assessment materials show, we will use bold lettering to highlight the skill of explanation in Part A, and in Part B to focus on the area that is required for the evaluation. For example, we will bold the words in Part A of explain why. And in Part B, words such as mainly responsible, most significant, the most important reason, was this seriously threatened, or whatever the focus of the evaluation is. Perhaps the most significant change to HY1 is in the provision of a more detailed, new style mark scheme. We have agreed with the examinations regulators to combine the older A01A and A01B strands into one to reflect the demands of Assessment Objective 1. You will note that it requires candidates to have knowledge of the topic, to communicate clearly, to be able to analyse, to explain, to evaluate, and to reach a judgment about key concepts and characteristics, and also to explain the relationship between them. We have combined the 2 strands into one and laid out the mark scheme in a different fashion, but one which, we feel, provides clear guidance as to how and why certain marks have been awarded. The new style of mark scheme applies throughout in the same format for Part A and Part B. It begins with a technical graph showing how the marks which were allocated for A01A and A01B have been amalgamated into A01. This is really no different from the previous distribution of marks, and the same sort of response in 2013 and after will gain the same number of marks as in 2012. As usual, examiners and staff in centres are advised to decide on the level to be awarded as a first step and then to fix a mark according to where in that level the response best fits. It is expected that examiners would place the response at one of the 3 positions within a level. We see these as low, middle, and high responses within a level. As previously, we have retained 3 main levels in both the Part A and Part B of the mark schemes. We urge teachers and examiners to use the highest mark at each range of marks once they have decided on the level and the sub-level, low, middle or high. They are advised to only reduce that mark for a stated reason, for example, to reflect weaknesses in the quality of written communication. In general, for example at Part A, we would expect candidates who produce a good Level 2 response to be placed at the top of the range of marks for Level 2. That is 16. This is for candidates who focus their explanation on the key issue in the question, but are unable to show the relationships between the key features and characteristics. That is, they are unable to produce a coherent and linked explanation. At Level 3, we still expect that in addition to good quality written communication, candidates will select and provide supporting factual material while offering a linked and coherent explanation of the development of the event set in the question. The mark scheme demands that candidates need to make clear the relationship between factors making for change. That is what we mean by a coherent, linked explanation. Many candidates who know the material well go on to make a list of factors, which is a Level 2 response. We hope, now that they have a little more thinking time, that they will be able to provide a coherent and linked explanation. After the grid just shown, there is a section showing the indicative content, some of which may feature in the response. The purpose of this is to show that there is a wide range of content acceptable to the principal examiner, and to stress that the ones provided are indicative, not prescriptive. It is impossible to include the wide range of possible content from the huge range of centres, textbooks, not to mention internet sites being used by candidates and centres. We cannot include and anticipate every response, but we can and do credit any valid response. The next section of the mark scheme includes a couple of lines on the type of response expected, and that is where the main answer is to be found. Here, as elsewhere in the AS, including HY2, the principal examiners will provide a summary of the type of response they're looking for in the answer. They will then go on to provide some content information. It is worth noting the phrase in this section that some of the issues to consider may include, which reinforces the message that not every single issue has to be considered and that not every issue has been included in this summary. Obviously, the structure for Part B follows the same system, and there is no need for me to go through that again here. You will notice that the descriptors for each sub-part of the level now gives more information than before on the quality of response required. As previously, Level 2 is awarded to candidates who compare various factors in an attempt to offer an evaluation and a judgment on the question set. At Level 3, the mark scheme makes it clear that the candidates need to analyse and evaluate the relationship between the key factors and to cover most, or for the very highest marks, all of the set period. We do expect an analysis and an evaluation of the set main factor and an evaluation of the other key issues in bringing about change over the whole of the period set. After the grid will follow a section, as before, on the indicative content. Again, notice needs to be taken of the expectation of the candidate's response contained in this section. It will demand that the main factor set should be analysed and evaluated against the importance or significance of other key issues, some of which will then be identified in reaching a judgment about change over the whole period. Although HY1 has seen 4 major changes, it seems to us that centres will see these accredited changes as an improvement in offering more choice of topics and questions, a greater range of stems, more time for the 2 essays, and a clearer and more accessible mark scheme.